Imagine the scene because you've likely lived it. The conversation is electric, flowing effortlessly. You're sharing a look with her that feels like it could power a small city, and she laughs, not a polite, socially mandated chuckle, but a genuine head-tilted back laugh that seems to echo in the space between you. Every signal, every bit of data your senses are collecting appears to be screaming, yes. And then, radio silence. The energy shifts, she pulls back into herself, and you're left alone in the quiet aftermath, asking yourself that same agonizing question. Was that all in my head? This sudden shift isn't just frustrating, it's a form of emotional whiplash that sabotages your certainty and paralyzes you from making any real move. What if I told you that this exact pattern, this confusing dance of approach and withdrawal, isn't the rejection you perceive it to be? What if, from the perspective of a behavioral psychologist, this very contradiction is one of the most potent and honest indicators of genuine female interest? For years, men have been conditioned to scan the horizon for simple, unambiguous green lights, clear, easily digestible signs of attraction. But this fundamental misunderstanding of the emotional language being spoken is precisely where so many connections falter and die. You are searching for a single, declarative sentence in a dialect that is communicated almost entirely through a rich, nonverbal, and often paradoxical poetry. You're looking for a sign when you should be looking for a signature. This is precisely why you're here. You haven't come for another superficial list of cliches or a cheap psychological trick. You are here to be handed a key, a sophisticated framework designed to decode the hidden language of attraction. By the time this video concludes, you will not just have a handful of ambiguous gestures to look for, you will possess a diagnostic tool. We are going to systematically move you from that state of chronic, anxious confusion into a place of profound and unshakable internal clarity. You will finally learn to perceive the subtle melody beneath the social noise, to read the emotional subtext that 99% of other men are completely deaf to. This ability to see what others miss will equip you with a calm, assertive confidence that is, in itself, immensely attractive. This journey from confusion to clarity is a powerful one, and I'm glad we're taking it together. As we begin, it's always fascinating to see how far this knowledge travels. So take a brief moment and let me know in the comments what city or state you're watching from. And a piece of critical advice: make sure you stay with me until the very end. The individual signals we will discuss are illuminating, but the final pattern we'll uncover is the keystone. It's the element that locks everything else into place, and missing it is like reading a suspenseful novel and skipping the final, revealing chapter. As a behavioral psychologist, my work isn't about collecting isolated trivia. It's about understanding the deep underlying architecture of human connection. And this is where the common approach to decoding attraction fails so spectacularly. For too long, men have been taught to be signal hunters, desperately trying to check boxes on a generic list. She laughed, she touched her arm, she played with her hair. This is the equivalent of trying to appreciate a masterpiece by analyzing individual specks of paint. It completely misses the composition, the emotion, and the story. From my perspective, as both a woman and a psychologist, this focus on singular, decontextualized actions is the single greatest source of misinterpretation in modern dating. It's a fundamentally flawed model that guarantees confusion because it ignores the very essence of how genuine interest is actually communicated. Therefore, our first order of business is to completely discard that fragmented, ineffective checklist. In its place, we will install a far more powerful and reliable diagnostic framework, the same one used in behavioral analysis. This framework is built not on single actions, but on a constellation of interconnected variables: patterns, context, timing, and, most critically, the beautiful and revealing dance of contradiction. A polite smile is just social noise, but a polite smile that is consistently directed at you, that lingers a fraction of a second too long in a crowded room, and that appears even when her words are playfully challenging you, that is no longer noise. That is a signal emerging from the pattern. It is the story being told in the spaces between the words, and it's infinitely more honest than the words themselves. My role here is to be your guide and translator in this nuanced, nonverbal language. I will provide you with the lens to perceive the emotional choreography that is constantly unfolding right in front of you. Think of me as the one who can point to the subtle, almost invisible threads of intention that connect a glance to a gesture, a pause to a question. We are about to move beyond the simplistic world of body language hacks and into the sophisticated realm of reading emotional and relational dynamics. The journey requires focus and a willingness to see beyond the obvious, but what you will gain is not a trick. It's a profound and lasting shift in perception. The first and most crucial pattern we'll decode is something I call the gravitational pull, because it's all about how she manages the space around you. The gravitational pull is the first and most fundamental pattern you must learn to recognize. It's a primal, nonverbal dance that plays out in the physical space between you and a woman who is genuinely interested. A man who is not trained to see this will only perceive random movements, a series of coincidences. But for the man who understands, her movements become a magnetic field, a tangible force that she is both projecting and reacting to. It's not about her simply being near you, it's about the dynamic, often contradictory pattern of her proximity. She'll close the distance only to widen it again, creating a subtle ebb and flow of physical presence. This isn't random, it's the very first sentence in a long, silent conversation about her desire. This pattern most often materializes as a series of micro-invasions into your personal space. In a loud bar, she might lean in, her hair brushing your shoulder, to say something she could have said from a foot away. While passing you in a hallway, her arm might make a brief, seemingly accidental contact. She finds a plausible excuse to momentarily breach that invisible 18-inch bubble of your personal territory, and just as quickly she retreats. This is a critical test on two fronts. First, she's testing your reaction. Do you flinch, or do you hold your ground with calm, receptive energy? Second, she's testing her own nervous system. How does it feel to be that close to you? It's a low-risk, high-information maneuver that creates a spark of tangible physical tension. As this pattern evolves, it can become more sophisticated. Instead of a direct micro-invasion, she might start positioning herself as a beautiful obstacle. You'll find her standing in the exact spot you need to pass to get a drink, or she'll be seemingly engrossed in her phone right at the exit you're about to use. It appears coincidental, but the consistency of these accidents is the true message. She is not blocking you. She is engineering an opportunity for interaction without taking the social risk of a direct approach. She is placing herself in your gravitational path, creating a scenario where an encounter is not just possible, but almost inevitable. For the man who is unaware, she's just in the way. For the man who understands, she is rolling out the welcome mat. Now, we've talked about the physical space around you, but this is only the first layer. Once she has determined that the physical space is safe, the communication moves to a far more potent and intimate channel: her eyes. The way a woman uses her gaze is one of the most misunderstood and yet most revealing aspects of attraction. A simple glance can be dismissed, but a pattern of specific gazes is a conversation in itself. Men are often so afraid of being seen as staring or being creepy that they fail to hold a woman's gaze long enough to receive the data she is sending. But learning to read the nuances of her eye contact is absolutely critical. It's the difference between seeing a polite smile and feeling the warmth of genuine invitation. The most common and powerful pattern is what I call the gaze test. It's not simply holding eye contact. It's a specific sequence of looking. She will meet your eyes across a room or in a conversation, holding the gaze for a fraction of a second longer than is typical for a polite social glance. Then, crucially, she will break the contact by looking down, a gesture of momentary submission or internal processing, before her eyes dart back up to you, as if to check if you are still looking. That second look is everything. It's a nonverbal question. Did you feel that too? Are you still with me? This is a profound act of vulnerability, a test to see if you can handle the intensity of her focus without wavering. This gaze test often evolves into the even more intimate triangular gaze. This is a pattern where her eyes move from your one eye to your other eye and then drop down to your mouth before returning to your eyes. This isn't a fleeting random movement. It's a deliberate, albeit often subconscious, scanning pattern. When she does this, she is moving beyond seeing you as just a conversational partner. She is, in that moment, acknowledging your physical presence, the reality of your lips, the source of your words. It's a silent, visual confession. I'm not just listening to what you are saying. I am thinking about you in a physical, tangible way. A single triangular gaze might be a flicker of thought, but when it's repeated, it's a consistent, screaming signal of attraction. But this is where so many men get completely thrown off course. Her body is leaning in, her eyes are doing this incredible dance of connection, and then her words seem to contradict everything. She might challenge you, disagree with you, or playfully dismiss an idea you just shared. The average man hears the words, takes them at face value, and immediately assumes he has misread all the other signs. He retreats in confusion, and the connection fizzles out. But what if those contradictory words weren't a sign of rejection at all? What if they were actually part of the test? Understanding this next layer, the beautiful and revealing clash between her words and her body, is where you truly begin to master this language. This is the principle of verbal and nonverbal contradiction, and it is a cornerstone of genuine attraction. Imagine you're telling a story, and she says with a slight smirk, "Oh, I'm not sure I believe that." But as she says it, her body is a portrait of engagement. Her torso and feet are oriented towards you, she's unconsciously mirroring your posture, and a small, suppressed smile is playing on her lips, even as her words feign disbelief. Her body is telling the truth. Her words are simply a smokescreen, a tool for playful engagement and, most importantly, plausible deniability. She is creating a fun, low-pressure dynamic where she can interact with you on a more personal level without having to put her cards on the table. This contradiction often takes the active form of teasing, a light, playful jab or a humorous challenge. This is not criticism. It is an invitation to a game. When a woman teases you, she is testing several things at once. She is testing your confidence. Can you take a small joke without becoming defensive or insecure? She is testing your humor. Can you play along and return the volley with your own brand of lighthearted wit? A woman who is genuinely interested doesn't want a conversation that feels like a job interview. She wants an interaction that feels alive and unpredictable. A playful tease delivered with warm, open body language is her way of seeing if you are a worthy playmate, someone who can handle the spark of energy between you. We've covered the invisible currents of space, the intimate language of the eyes, and the revealing contradictions in her communication. But now, we move to a layer that is even more hidden because it is disguised as simple conversation. The most potent signals are often not gestures at all, but the specific types of information she chooses to share with you. A woman has a social shield that she keeps up with most people, a curated version of herself. When she begins to feel a genuine connection, she will start to lower that shield, not all at once, but piece by piece. This next signal is so subtle it's almost always missed, yet it is one of the most deliberate and meaningful of them all. This signal is the offering of calculated vulnerability. In the middle of a normal conversation, she will share a small personal detail that is slightly outside the bounds of typical small talk. It could be a slightly embarrassing story from her childhood, a quirky fear, or a candid admission of a minor failure. This isn't trauma dumping, it's a carefully chosen piece of her authentic self. She is momentarily dropping her social armor to create a small bubble of intimacy. It's a test to see if you are a safe person to be real with. Will you listen with empathy, or will you judge or dismiss her? How you handle this small offered vulnerability determines whether she will ever feel safe enough to offer you more. Alongside vulnerability, you must learn to recognize the indirect compliment. A woman who is truly impressed by you will rarely compliment your most obvious physical attributes. Saying, "You have a nice car," or "You're handsome," is low investment and can be given to anyone. The compliment that truly matters is the one that proves she has been paying close attention to you as a unique individual. It will be a compliment about your character, your mind, or your passion. The way you talk about your work, your eyes just light up. Or, "You have a very calming way of explaining things." These compliments signal a far deeper level of observation and appreciation. They are her way of saying, "I don't just see you, I see into you." Finally, we arrive at the signal that ties all the others together, the pretext conversation. This is when a woman initiates an interaction with you using a flimsy, almost transparent excuse. She might ask you for the time when she's wearing a watch, or ask a question about a product in a store that she could have easily figured out herself. The pretext itself is utterly irrelevant. The message is the act of initiation itself. In a world where women are constantly bombarded with unwanted attention, for her to expend the social and emotional energy to voluntarily open a channel of communication with you is a massive signal. She isn't interested in the answer to her trivial question. She's interested in creating a bridge to you. Let's bring these patterns to life with concrete examples, because this is where the theory becomes a tangible reality you can observe in your own life. Imagine you're at a busy coffee shop. She is there with a friend and you're waiting for your order. She gets up to grab a lid and her path takes her unnecessarily close to you, her arm brushing yours for a split second as she passes. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," she says with a quick smile before retreating. The literal-minded man dismisses this as a simple, clumsy accident. The man who understands, however, recognizes the gravitational pull. A few moments later, from her table, you feel her gaze. You look up, she holds your eye contact for a beat longer than socially required, then offers a small, private smile before looking down into her cup. This isn't two separate random events. This is a beautifully orchestrated two-part test. A physical probe followed by a visual confirmation. Now, consider a different scenario. A group setting with colleagues or mutual friends. You're passionately explaining an idea or telling a compelling story. Her body language is a perfect mirror of engagement. She's leaning in, her posture is open, and her focus is entirely on you. When you finish, she smirks playfully and says, "I don't know, that sounds a little too convenient. I think you're leaving out the messy parts." The average man hears this as criticism. He might become defensive or backpedal. But this is the classic verbal and nonverbal contradiction. Her words are a playful challenge, but her body's unwavering focus tells the real story. Then she follows up with, "But the way you connected those ideas is something I've never seen anyone else do." This is the indirect compliment. It's not about your looks or your success, it's about your mind. She's signaling that she's not just listening, she's actively analyzing and admiring the unique way you operate. Finally, let's look at how this translates to the digital world, where physical cues are absent. You've exchanged numbers and the conversation is sporadic. Out of the blue, you get a text. "Hey, quick random question. What was the name of that book you mentioned the other day?" This is a pretext conversation. The question is irrelevant. The true message is, "I'm thinking about you and I'm creating a low-stakes reason to interact." After you answer, the conversation might flow, and then she drops this in. "That reminds me of how I'm so terrible at remembering names. I once called my new boss by the wrong name for a whole week. It was mortifying." This is calculated vulnerability. She's not just sharing a flaw, she's handing you a small, imperfect piece of her humanity to see if you will treat it with humor and grace rather than judgment. How you respond to this small offering of authenticity determines whether you'll ever get to see the rest. But now, we must address the single most dangerous trap you can fall into on this journey. Hearing these patterns can tempt you to become a signal hunter, a man with a checklist, meticulously scanning for clues and treating every interaction like a forensic investigation. This is a fatal error. It rips you out of the present moment and turns a human connection into an academic exercise. The patterns we've discussed are not a scorecard, their appearance is not a guarantee, and their absence is not a definitive rejection. They are simply data points, and data without context is meaningless noise. A playful tease from a colleague in a relaxed social setting means one thing. That same tease from your boss in a formal meeting means something else entirely. Your most important task is not to spot a signal, but to read the entire emotional ecosystem in which that signal appears. Is she shy or outgoing? Is the environment public or private? Is she sober or has she had a few drinks? Answering these questions is more critical than identifying a triangular gaze. Without context, you are simply a man looking for patterns in the clouds, seeing only what your own hope or anxiety wants you to see. This leads us to the second and equally critical mistake: misinterpreting ambiguity as a negative sign. The moment you see a powerful pattern of interest, there is a natural, almost overwhelming human urge to seek confirmation, to solidify the gain, to make her say in clear terms what her body has been whispering. You must resist this urge. The delicate, beautiful ambiguity of early-stage attraction is not a problem to be solved. It is the very environment in which it grows. When a woman pulls back slightly after a moment of intense connection, it is not always rejection. Often, it is her own internal system managing the emotional electricity you've just created. It is her retreat to safety to process her feelings. If you chase her into that moment of retreat, demanding clarity or reassurance, you are not displaying confidence. You are displaying a neediness that is toxic to genuine desire. Your role is to become a calm, stable anchor in this beautiful, confusing sea. You must learn to hold the tension, to be comfortable with the not knowing, and to trust the pattern over the momentary silence. True confidence is not demanding she show you her cards. It's being so sure of your own value that you can simply enjoy the game. Mas agora nós chegamos à camada final, a revelação que une tudo o que discutimos. Nós exploramos o espaço, os olhos, as palavras e as vulnerabilidades. Mas o sinal mais profundo e honesto que uma mulher pode te dar não é nenhum desses isoladamente. É a própria contradição. O sinal não é o fato de ela se aproximar. É o padrão dela se aproximar e recuar. Não é o olhar intenso. É o olhar intenso seguido de uma quebra tímida. Este padrão de tensão e liberação é a manifestação visível da sua batalha interna. O seu desejo genuíno de se conectar com você, lutando contra o seu instinto de autoproteção. Um homem comum vê isso como sinais mistos e desiste. O homem que entende, percebe que a batalha em si é o sinal de que ele já está vencendo. So you've reached the end, but in reality, you've just arrived at a new beginning. The noise of confusing, mixed signals has finally silenced, replaced by the clear, resonant music of emotional truth. You no longer see contradiction, you see the beautiful, vulnerable dance between her desire to connect and her instinct for self-protection. This perception is a superpower. But seeing the door is open is only half the battle. Knowing precisely how to walk through it without causing it to slam shut is the other. That is why it is absolutely critical that you do not stop here. Your journey continues in the very next video titled, The Art of the Advance, How to Respond to Her Signals Without Killing the Tension. In it, we will move from diagnosis to action, ensuring your newfound clarity translates into a confident, successful connection. Do not lose this momentum. Click the video on your screen now, and let's complete what we started.